Friends, welcome to the Motion Ram channel. Here, it's all about motion design and earning money on stock platforms. And today, we're going to break down this wonderful, dynamic, interesting, and vibrant animation from the company Lovable. And as always, let's not wait too long and jump right into After Effects to get to work. First, you will need to right-click and then create a new solid layer. You should name this new solid layer BG. After that, select Type 2 and then proceed to write the desired text. For this example, I will personally write Motion Ram. The font that is being used for this text is Intermedium. Finally, let's make sure to center the anchor point for proper alignment. Let's adjust it a bit to our liking. That's it. And at the same time, let's add a second text. This will be the text dev mode. Also, center the anchor point and align it to the center. Let's enlarge it significantly so that it now takes up almost the entire available width of our composition, making it much more prominent. For now, let's temporarily hide this particular text layer and then proceed to animate the very first text element by carefully adjusting its position. To begin, precisely set the initial keyframe at the desired starting point. Subsequently, establish the second keyframe and smoothly animate the text element towards the left side of the screen. Finally, adjust the animation graph value to a precise 85, which will result in a fluid and visually appealing animation sequence that looks exactly like this. And turn on the second text. Turn off the very first one, and then add a distinct blinking typewriter cursor, just like this example. There should absolutely be a readily available preset in your After Effects software that includes a blinking cursor, precisely like this one. And make sure to set the animation graph to 85% as well. Carefully move it to the right side and ensure that the animation graphs overlap a little bit, so that the overall animation appears much more dynamic and fluid. This is specifically the transition from the first text to the second. And also, we will animate this second text layer by its position property, but this time the animation will proceed from the right side to the left side. Set the animation graph to 85 as well, so you will then clearly get an animation that looks precisely like this. Carefully trim the text right at the precise moment of its absolute highest speed, which you can accurately check and verify by observing the detailed animation graph, and then subsequently proceed to do exactly the same meticulous process with the second text element as well, so that we can achieve a visual transition that looks roughly like this, for example. Next, add the character value to the second text. Let's name our animator 01, so it's easier to keep track. We'll set the index so that the count is by quantity rather than by percentage, and set the values to 1 and 2. And the offset will be 8. And in the character value setting, I found certain symbols assigned to specific values. So you can just follow along with me. For the first one, it's 35. For the second animator, it's 91, and we shift the offset to the left, decreasing it so it will be 8, 7, 6, and 5. The next value is 36. That is, so that each letter is replaced by some other symbol. And the fourth value is 126. And so, our original text ultimately gets replaced by these various random symbols, appearing as a jumbled mess. Next, in the search, we type the word AND, select our text and animate specifically the AND parameter. We animate it from a value of 2 to a value of 1. We select these keyframes and set them to toggle hold keyframe. This means that the value will only change when there is a second keyframe, or more precisely, when the timeline indicator is on the second keyframe. We meticulously create a slight, deliberate offset for the animation keyframes so that the visual reveal happens with a noticeable offset to the right. And consequently, we achieve an animation that truly looks like a classic typewriter, gradually and precisely transforming individual symbols into complete, coherent text, step by painstaking step. Something like this, more or less. Next, let's draw the following graphic element. We'll proceed to draw a fundamental shape, specifically a rectangle. Let's assign it the designation 01 and subsequently augment its dimensions to, for instance, 1000 units in width by 300 units in height. Of course, it is essential to first disengage this small illustrative lock icon so that we are able to independently adjust and set the two distinct parameters for its size. And let's set the corner radius to 75. We'll change the color to something kind of grayish. Let's duplicate this rectangle and adjust its size and color a bit. For now, let's leave it like this. The values will be 500 and 370 for the size. Let's make it 550. Let's go ahead and turn on the grid now. It's precisely where the semicolon is located, I believe. And then, let's carefully select the pen tool and make sure to turn on the snap to grid feature so that our pen tool will accurately and precisely snap to the grid lines, ensuring perfect alignment. And let's carefully draw a shape just like this. Add a prominent stroke to it, then turn off the fill completely and set the numerical value to 15. Rename it to arrow and set both the round cap and round join so that everything is perfectly rounded. Let's precisely align everything now. And now, let's proceed to duplicate this particular arrow. Change the horizontal value to -100 so our arrow turns in the other direction. Let's move these two shapes apart a bit. Make it so it looks something like this, with these positions. You can even increase the stroke a little. And let's change the colors to something dark, closer to black, and for the second one, a bit lighter. And let's change the value back to 500, I like it better that way. And let's set up pick whip parenting, so we don't have to animate everything, but only animate one element in the future. Let's turn our text back on. Add a null object. And name it P1. We will animate this particular element by its position. Set two distinct keyframes and then animate it smoothly to the left side. Set the animation graph value to 85. Move our shapes. Roughly like this. Wait, actually, let's first parent our shapes to P1, and at the highest speed, that's exactly where we'll position the start of our shapes. And we'll get an animation similar to the first one. It's also a match cut to the left. Let's shift this secondary element, the second rectangle, with the arrows to the left. It'll look something like this. Let's now add another null object, and then we will parent the first null object to the second one that we just created. This will be our scale animation. Let's set the first keyframe and the second keyframe. And let's animate it from 100 to, say, 125. Let's make the animation curve a bit smaller, to make it a bit smoother, 75. And let's increase the value to 140. Let's gently move it a little bit to the left side, so that everything looks dynamic, and so that one particular animation slightly and subtly overlaps the previous one, creating a seamless transition. Alright, And let's animate the size. Now, take this particular black rectangle and also carefully position it within the composition. Set precise keyframes and then smoothly animate it towards the right side of the screen. You should place it somewhere around this specific area, ensuring that it gracefully slides to the right. Subsequently, roughly in the middle portion of this animation sequence, set another crucial keyframe on the size property and proceed to make our rectangle a little bit bigger, expanding its dimensions. Hold down the Control key and then click on this particular keyframe so that the animation transition is exceptionally smooth and wonderfully continuous. This thoughtful action will effectively create a visually appealing stretching effect for the rectangle, enhancing its dynamic appearance. While it's moving, let's make the animation a bit more dynamic and visually engaging. To achieve this, you have the ability to precisely control the timing and flow of your animation. You can easily click and drag the end keyframe, which marks the conclusion of your animation sequence, either to the left or to the right. Moving it to the left will compress the animation, making it play faster, while dragging it to the right will extend the animation, causing it to play more slowly and deliberately. This intuitive method allows you to stretch out the animation as much as you want, giving you complete flexibility to fine-tune its duration and pacing to perfectly suit your creative vision. Now, let's proceed to add another object to our scene, introducing a new element for further interaction and animation. Specifically, C1, which represents our first object, will be directly linked to C2, establishing a hierarchical relationship where the movement or transformation of C2 will influence C1. Furthermore, we'll animate an additional scale property for one of these objects, allowing it to grow or shrink over time, adding another layer of visual interest and complexity to our overall animation. This will be a comprehensive kind of zoom-out effect, so we will carefully animate it from a starting point of 100, progressively moving down to 0. The animation graph is specifically set to a value of 85, and also at the absolute highest speed available. Concurrently, we will also precisely cut the existing background and subsequently change its color to a new, carefully selected hue, to any arbitrary color, just so that some noticeable and distinct visual change happens on the screen. At this precise moment, you have the perfect opportunity to seamlessly insert, for example, some relevant and engaging footage, or perhaps other compelling visual elements that enhance the overall presentation. I have meticulously prepared a specific pointer, much like a standard mouse cursor, which we will also animate additionally and quite carefully to make the entire animation sequence significantly more dynamic and visually captivating. We will specifically enable the 3D rendering option for this cursor and then carefully select the rendering method with Cinema 4D. This particular step is incredibly important and absolutely crucial so that we can effectively perform the extrusion process and consequently achieve a truly volumetric and three-dimensional mouse cursor, especially when it rotates and moves within the scene. We will then carefully move our S2 element a little bit further to the right side of the composition, and subsequently we will establish a direct and functional link between the pointer and S1, ensuring their synchronized movement and interaction within the animated sequence. If you need this mouse cursor, this icon, you can write somewhere in the comments and I'll upload it somewhere for you. If not, you can just find one on Icon Finder. First, find some cool icons. Then, we will add another null object for our mouse cursor. We'll call it S1 because we'll be animating its position and also its scale. This is just for our own reference, for orientation. And we link the mouse cursor to S1. We position the mouse cursor roughly, for now, somewhere around this position. And now, let's actually work on precisely defining the position and carefully adjusting the scale of our elements. This involves meticulously placing them within the designated space and ensuring their dimensions are appropriately proportioned for optimal visual balance. And let's also set the rotation just a little bit so that we can effectively work with the rotation as well. Move the mouse cursor somewhere around the precise center of our designated rectangle, then carefully adjust the rotation a little bit more, ensuring optimal positioning. Actually no, let's not animate the rotation here. Instead, we'll animate the rotation directly on the pointer itself, because we need it, since our object is a bit off-center from our mouse. And what will happen is that the mouse won't rotate in the correct spot. So let's set 2 keyframes for the rotation, kind of like this, so it looks like it's dipping. And actually you can also easily open and carefully check the extrusion depth, such as the precise depth value for accurate measurements. And if you set the value, for example, to 500, you'll see that this kind of extrusion appears on the shape. That's exactly why we needed to enable rendering in Cinema 4D. Let's animate the scale as well, because as it is, well, the objects are a bit off center. The anchor point is on the mouse, so it doesn't look quite right. We'll animate the scale and rotation specifically on our mouse. And we meticulously set the third crucial keyframe in our animation sequence. Following this, we then carefully return the value to approximately 2 frames, ensuring a smooth and controlled transition. The specific assignment for this adjustment is structured as follows. We initiate a decrease of 30 units, meaning that if our starting point is 0, or more precisely, if we are transitioning from a range of 0 to 10, we then apply a subsequent reduction of 30 units. This precise manipulation allows for the desired visual effect to be achieved. Subsequently, we proceed to set a dedicated keyframe specifically for the scale property of the object. It's important to note that the very first keyframe for the scale is not actually needed in this particular scenario. Our focus is solely on setting keyframes at these 2 designated points in time to control the scaling behavior. Okay, let's also gently move the second keyframe a bit further to the right along the timeline, because the scale currently starts too early, which could lead to an undesirable visual outcome. By shifting it, we ensure that the scale animation commences at the optimal moment. And then, finally, we define the ultimate and conclusive scale value, bringing our animation to its intended visual state. And let's carefully clone these 2 specific keyframes where the animated value returns back to its original state. Then, select all the keyframes and simply press the F9 key. And now we'll get approximately this kind of animation. For the animation graph, let's set it to 85 for now. We are currently observing the animation as it progresses up to the precise moment of its highest speed, which also signifies the culmination of our final scaling adjustment. So, this is the specific kind of animation we currently have on display at this very moment. Let's proceed to experiment and play around a bit with the various rotation values, carefully adjusting them in order to discover something that is significantly more engaging and visually appealing, ideally. The current rotation, in my opinion, appears to be a bit too subtle and perhaps even too small to achieve the desired visual impact. Therefore, let's attempt the strategic maneuver of lowering the anchor point. This particular adjustment, by altering the pivot around which the animation rotates, should undoubtedly make the overall visual effect much more dynamic and inherently interesting. Yes, indeed, this modification looks considerably more captivating and visually stimulating. We can even consider lowering it a little bit more to further enhance the effect. It now distinctly seems as though the mouse cursor is gracefully falling and descending into the rectangular boundary, creating a compelling and immersive visual experience. It looks quite interesting and visually appealing. Let's now proceed to add a sophisticated shadow effect, specifically a prominent drop shadow. We will meticulously set the values for this effect a bit higher than the default to truly enhance the visual depth and make the mouse appear significantly more three-dimensional, almost as if it's gracefully hovering or even flying distinctly above our meticulously crafted shapes. So, for the opacity setting, let's precisely set it to a value of 60%, ensuring a noticeable yet not overwhelming presence. And for both the distance and softness parameters, we will adjust them within a range of 50 to 100, or perhaps even explore values beyond that, depending on the desired visual impact. You are highly encouraged to experiment extensively with these settings to discover what truly works best and most effectively for your specific design preferences and aesthetic goals. For my personal preference and what I find to be the ideal and most visually pleasing values, they are consistently around 75 for the distance and a full 100 for the softness, creating a very pronounced and realistic shadow. And now, let's also meticulously set the final position for the mouse within our composition. Currently, our mouse is unfortunately syncing together with this particular element, which is an undesirable effect. This occurs precisely because it is somehow attached or linked in a way that causes it to inherit the syncing motion. We absolutely need to rectify this issue to ensure proper animation and visual integrity. To address this, we will strategically split our null object and the shape right at this crucial moment in the timeline. Following this separation, we will then carefully reattach our mouse. The reattachment will be to a newly designated second null object. This specific action is taken so that the mouse no longer follows the scale transformations of the original element. Consequently, it will not scale together with the rectangle, which was the problematic behavior we observed. Previously, the mouse was directly attached to EOS 1, which led to the unintended scaling and syncing effects we are now correcting through this more precise and controlled attachment method. But now it moves forward quite separately. More precisely, let the mouse cursor move forward entirely on its own, and that's precisely it. The rectangular shape did indeed perform a kind of significant zoom out, revealing more of the surrounding area, and the mouse moved gracefully upward, ascending along its designated path, and also subtly scaled, expanding slightly in size to emphasize its presence within the visual frame. So we end up with roughly this particular kind of animation, a dynamic visual sequence that captures the intended effect. Let's also meticulously adjust the anchor point, repositioning it a bit lower than its current placement, moving it down just a little to make it inherently more interesting for the viewer. Additionally, let's animate the position for more depth and realism, so the mouse appears to be falling forward and simultaneously inward, adding a sense of three-dimensionality to its trajectory. We'll meticulously copy the animation graphs as well, ensuring all the carefully crafted timing and easing curves are precisely replicated. So we don't have to mess around with this. Let's just insert these 3 new position keys, and now it really looks like the mouse is falling forward, as if it's going inside. This adds more depth, more interest, and it really looks like it's some kind of 3D. Let's also meticulously copy and carefully paste the precise position. This is indeed the perfectly sliced shape, ensuring that absolutely everything lines up with great precision. It is crucial that you thoroughly check every single element to make absolutely certain there are no mismatches whatsoever, because if there are, something significant will undoubtedly go wrong later in the process. Our keys, unfortunately, got a bit messed up and disorganized, so we definitely cannot leave them in that state. To enhance the animation and make it considerably more dynamic, let's strategically move the keys once again, adjusting their placement for a smoother effect. Something clearly went off here. This situation is certainly not good at all. Simply copying and pasting without careful consideration will not provide a satisfactory solution. Let's proceed to delete that problematic part for the time being, then we will just slice it again with renewed attention, and everything should then be perfectly fine and aligned. Our initial position was slightly off, causing an issue. Now observe that the mouse does not return back to its original spot as intended. It behaves like this. Let's meticulously check the keyframe velocity settings and then turn on the continuous option. This is vital so that the mouse animation does not stop abruptly and jarringly at the very end, but instead exhibits a subtle and natural follow-through motion, making the animation much smoother. Even when you perform a click, the mouse currently makes a small, undesirable pause, which is precisely what we want to avoid for a fluid animation. That's exactly what the continuous option is designed for. Make sure to check that specific box, and then this unwanted pausing will no longer occur. There will be a constant and uninterrupted movement. Even if the overall speed of the animation is set to a low value, the movement will remain consistently continuous and smooth. Now, with these adjustments, you can no longer perceive that particular issue. Let's proceed to slice this pointer element once more, and then carefully link it to the other null object, which is the one that holds the final and correct scale and position properties. Now, with all these careful adjustments, everything is finally good and properly configured. I also have some pre-prepared and carefully selected colors available here, specifically derived from this particular animation project. I personally prepared them myself, and for added convenience, I made a composition containing 4 distinct shapes. This setup is incredibly handy and efficient, especially if you are working on a large-scale project and have the extensive task of coloring numerous elements. You simply drop in your chosen colors into the composition and then, with ease, just click on them to apply. Let's now create a new shape specifically for this visual effect at the bottom of the composition. It is going to be an elegant ellipse. After creating it, we will add a Gaussian blur effect to it to soften its edges. Next, we will duplicate this shape and then proceed to change its colors to create a new visual element. We are aiming for something that will achieve a beautiful blue-violet. or perhaps a blue-pink mix, creating an interesting gradient. Let's set a significantly bigger Gaussian blur value, increasing it all the way up to 1000, and apply it in this manner. Let the primary color be a deep dark blue, and the secondary color a vibrant pink one, so that we achieve a pleasing and noticeable bit of contrast between them. Now, let's carefully move these shapes a bit lower on the screen so that there is a small, subtle kind of ambient and atmospheric effect at the very bottom. I'm not entirely sure what the best term to call it is, but it adds a nice touch. It certainly looks pretty interesting and adds depth to the scene. And now let's take these shapes and at this particular point in time, let's carefully link it to our second text so that these distinct shapes move smoothly along with the text during the entire transition, thereby creating some truly dynamic and visually appealing movement. It looks pretty cool indeed. Let's proceed to add a 4-color gradient to this specific text. Just meticulously arrange the 4 vibrant colors in a precise line, and now you can very quickly and efficiently click through these various colors to change them quite fast, as you can clearly see. It's exceptionally convenient and user-friendly. Let's also thoughtfully add a subtle glow, but with a bit less intensity than usual. Perhaps set it to 0.2, 0.3, maybe even 0.5, something along those lines, whatever precisely works best for your specific needs and visual preferences. So that there's a slight glow effect, and let's also add the grain effect. This adds a bit of graininess with a slightly higher intensity, set it to about 1.5. I just pick any preset, they're all basically fine, and I turn on monochrome so that we don't have any color in the grain. For these pixels, everything should be black and white only. You can also try out some presets and pick the one you like, then switch to final output mode with preview, and you will often get this particular kind of visually appealing grain effect. It truly looks quite aesthetically pleasing and certainly adds a significant bit of artistic stylization to the overall visual presentation. Instead of just text, let's duplicate this text, remove all effects from it, leave only the gradient and Gaussian blur. This will serve as our glow effect. To get more glow, you can increase the thickness if needed, aside from just enlarging the text itself. But for me that's a bit too much, so I'll keep it at semi-bold. And even the overall opacity is reduced to approximately 75% and 70% respectively. For now, I'll temporarily turn off the grain effect because it tends to consume a noticeable amount of system memory, which can slow down performance. This action is specifically taken to make our workflow smoother and significantly faster during this process. After that, let's navigate back to our main home screen to prepare for the next slide in our presentation. Additionally, we're going to experiment with an interesting visual effect by precisely slicing our background layer. To begin this, we'll return to the home interface and then proceed to add an ellipse shape directly onto our canvas. Next, we need to duplicate this existing background layer. For the second, newly duplicated background layer, we will carefully remove any applied mask. Conversely, for the first background layer, we will access its fill properties and specifically choose the color gradient option. Once selected, we will quickly and efficiently click through our desired color palette to apply a vibrant gradient. Following this, let's promptly open the mask settings panel. It is crucial at this stage to remember and ensure that the inverted checkbox is thoroughly checked to achieve the intended visual outcome. And let's proceed to set the mask feather to approximately 350 and then carefully adjust the expansion value in that direction, and for the other side set the value to around 400-500 so that our mask seamlessly blends into the other direction, creating a smooth and natural transition. And let's meticulously tweak the colors a bit to achieve something much more uniform and visually cohesive, because at this moment it's standing out far too much for my liking and disrupting the overall aesthetic. And then let's carefully add a subtle yet impactful little glow, perhaps, just to give it a bit of a stylized and artistic touch, enhancing its visual appeal and adding a touch of ethereal luminescence. Yes, let's even incrementally increase the mask expansion a bit more, allowing it to subtly grow and spread so it precisely creates, a kind of soft, diffused and beautifully colored highlight around the eye there, providing a captivating visual accent. Okay, our 0, 1, 2. This comprehensive adjustment process ensures that every element contributes to a harmonious and visually pleasing final result, meticulously refined to perfection. We carefully cut it and then change the colors on this specific rectangle, black. And this second rectangle, positioned precisely, will have the exact same gradient, meticulously applied, with the very same vibrant colors that we've carefully selected. We will then proceed to blend everything, every single element, into a cohesive and flowing line in precisely the same methodical way we did before, and then, with a swift and deliberate motion, quickly change the colors to introduce a dynamic shift. This intricate process, this careful manipulation of hues and forms, will ultimately become our primary color change effect, a visually striking transition that enhances the overall aesthetic. Furthermore, we will also add a subtle yet impactful glow, a luminous aura for a bit of artistic stylization to imbue the scene with a more polished and professional appearance. Concurrently, we'll meticulously copy our grain texture as well, ensuring its precise placement and integration. If you meticulously turn it on and observe its effect, it looks truly and remarkably cool, adding a layer of sophisticated visual depth and a tactile quality to the composition. So, with all these elements in place, let's meticulously see what we've meticulously got here, examining every detail with a critical eye. Right now, at this precise moment, I don't really like the click effect yet. It feels somewhat abrupt or lacking in refinement. We urgently need to adjust everything, every single parameter and timing, so that the click happens at the absolutely right and opportune moment, ensuring a seamless and natural interaction. And the subsequent transition looks exceptionally good, flowing smoothly and aesthetically pleasingly. We definitely need to tweak this a bit, refining the nuances and perfecting the timing. Let's meticulously move the mouse keys a little to the left, adjusting their position with careful precision, then select everything, every single component of our intricate design, and subsequently turn on custom view, which will provide us with a tailored and optimized perspective for our detailed adjustments. Or actually, upon further consideration, let's switch to left mode, which might offer a more advantageous and efficient viewpoint for the specific modifications we intend to make, allowing for greater precision and control over the intricate elements of our visual composition. And I truly want to create something that resembles an elegant arc so that my animation gracefully moves along this beautiful arc and gently dips inward. This is crucial because if it were to move in a strictly linear fashion, it would undoubtedly appear very rough and unnatural. You have the ability to carefully select this particular kind of animation path, then simply choose this specialized tool, and it will automatically create, if you precisely click on any specific point. It will enable the crucial option to, as it were, precisely pull the curve or something along those lines. This is an exceptionally convenient and highly effective tool. So, I've successfully completed it. Such a smooth and elegant curve, and I meticulously move the second position a little bit inward, carefully adjusting its placement to achieve the desired effect. Now, if we precisely go back to the active camera, we can clearly observe that we actually get this very distinct kind of dip a graceful and fluid movement along a perfectly defined arc. This particular outcome is basically exactly what was needed and precisely what we were aiming to achieve. So, to ensure perfect alignment and seamless continuity, we meticulously copied the exact position from the previous pointer and then accurately pasted it into the second one, ensuring that everything matches up flawlessly and precisely. For now, it's important to note that my current animation isn't volumetric for the pointer, meaning it lacks a three-dimensional quality in its representation. Because I turned off Cinema 4D render, it takes longer to load, so I enabled Classic 3D. But at the very end, for the final render, I meticulously turned Cinema 4D back on. And let's also carefully move everything around a little bit, especially the crucial transition, so that it is absolutely perfect and precisely aligned. And perhaps we will even make the transition a bit more dynamically engaging for the intricate animation of our mesh. When we perform a click, there should be a smooth and seamless transition, allowing the mesh to gracefully linger for a brief moment, and at that precise moment, it will beautifully transform into a spectrum of other vibrant colors. We'll also be incorporating some additional and engaging animation for this dynamic gradient background of ours. We'll meticulously animate its position, specifically moving it towards the left side of the screen, ensuring a fluid and seamless visual experience so that we achieve a truly captivating and aesthetically pleasing transition. Furthermore, to complement these animations and add another layer of visual interest, we'll integrate a CC reptile effect. We're still missing a little something there. The thing is, our solid is just one size and it moves, so it ends up that we're missing a bit. Let's move the CC reptile effect to the very top so that everything works exactly as we need, without any gaps. Now everything is fine with a higher value so that nothing leaks anywhere. Let's set it to 2000. And then you will proceed to meticulously replicate this exact same process on the second composition. Yes, and at this juncture, it is also imperative that our composition is animated by its scale, specifically to achieve a distinct and visually appealing zoom-out effect. This effect should be carefully executed, extending precisely up to the designated keyframe, ensuring a smooth and controlled visual transition. We probably can't directly link it to the precise position because our nulls are inherently offset, rather than being perfectly centered, as one might expect. Let's carefully turn on the nulls and meticulously observe their exact placement and orientation within the composition. As we visually inspect the display, we clearly see there's a noticeable dip, indicating a specific behavior or anomaly. To address this, let's proceed to animate the scale directly on the comp itself, specifically targeting the primary composition. And for the very first comp in the sequence, we will establish a crucial connection, linking it seamlessly to the previous one in the hierarchy, ensuring a smooth and continuous flow of animation and interaction throughout the entire setup. And we'll just animate the scale. That'll be easier. Yes, let's animate the scale to about 80. The animation graph is the usual one, just like for the other scales. 85. Let's check if everything's okay. Yes, grain is enabled. And now, let's take a moment to observe and appreciate the culmination of our efforts. What we have before us is the final, polished animation, the very visual narrative we meticulously crafted and refined. This animated sequence represents countless hours of dedication, from initial conceptualization and storyboarding, through the intricate stages of design, rendering, and post-production. We strive to achieve a seamless flow and captivating visual experience for our esteemed viewers. Thank you all immensely for your invaluable time and attention in watching this presentation. Your engagement and support are truly appreciated as we share this creative endeavor with you. Thanks for the likes and subscriptions. And as always, see you in the next tutorials.